for his portrayal of Jesus in Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ and as Mr. Reese in the global TV hit Person of Interest. He's back on the big screen July 4th in a brand new film called Sound of Freedom. It's a thriller. It's based on the true story of former federal agent Tim Ballard, who embarks on a treacherous mission to rescue children from sex traffickers in South America. I sat down with Jim Caviezel recently in Florida to discuss this groundbreaking film. Take a look at a bit of Sound of Freedom, followed by my exclusive interview with Caviezel. Watch.
It is the fastest growing international crime network that the world has ever seen. It has already passed the illegal arms trade, and soon it's going to pass the drug trade. Because you can sell a bag of cocaine one time to the child 5 to 10 times a day. God's children are not for sale.
I want to start, Jim, with why Tim Ballard was so intent that you should play him.
Tim saw The Count of Monte Cristo, and he saw The Passion of the Christ. And initially, Eduardo and Alejandro felt that I wasn't Tim, as far as the complete makeup of him. But he goes, no, but what's in his heart is what I want.
How did you first become aware of his work?
Well, first through my adoption of my children. And I became very aware of the dangers of what goes on around the world with children. And a lot of the agents I worked with over time had mentioned and talked about trafficking and how really bad this actually is, and then that's how his name came up and how but it was meeting him that I went, okay, we can do something here.
You accompanied him on one of these Underground Railroad missions.
I tried.
What was that like? What did you learn there?
I didn't actually get to go because I prepared for it. They flew me into Salt Lake many times as I was preparing, and I was with one of their key snipers. They brought me into they have a simulated room where, like police officers use in the military for training. Then we did actual CQC training with live rounds and everything. And then I was in his war room several times, watching the mission and through satellite feeds, watched what they were doing and preparing for what was going to happen. Then I, just write notes down. What are you looking for in this situation? And then when we got ready to go, he goes, "You can't go. It's too dangerous. This one's a bad one."
They didn't feel comfortable having you along.
No, not right. When they could lose their lead, possibly, or wounded, going into this one particular mission.
Carrie didn't want you, your wife, didn't want you shooting in Colombia, but you did shoot in Colombia.
She wanted me to do the film.
Yeah, but
it
not
was just
shoot
going
in
down
Colombia.
there. Yeah.
Maybe
I mean, it's a beautiful
San
country.
Diego
Don't get me wrong.
would have been a better alternative.
Right.
But you go to Colombia. You all flew in like on a prop plane to get to Cartagena.
No, that was more like Santa Marta.
Okay.
Santa Marta, that one. But then we went into the Medellin area, and then that was kind of.
And what did you see there? This was a very different. I mean, this was actually an area held by the cartel.
So when they're coming up to you and talking to you, Alejandro noticed it first. Normally, when the guys are coming up and trying to sell you something, they'll say, "Do you want cigarillos and whatnot?" And they'll say, "Do you want mujeres, women?" This is the first time they were like, "Do you want mujeres?" And then they go, "Do you want niños, little boys, little girls?" So that's kind of a different world. But we're the biggest consumers of it here in the United States of America.
$152 billion a year
correct.
Industry.
To give me an idea how big that is, Raymond, that's every sports team, professional sports team in the United States, still not $152 billion. Then add on World Cup soccer, all the big Real Madrid, still not enough. All of those as well, and then add on every 18-year-old in the United States going to Stanford University for 4 years, every 18-year-old, and that now you're talking $152 billion.
I want to backtrack a moment. You talked about Tim Ballard seeing you in Count of Monte Cristo and The Passion of the Christ. Before we get
to Sound of Freedom, I want to ask you what you've learned from some of these iconic actors, directors you worked with over your career. Let's start with Richard Harris, who was your co-star in The Count of Monte Cristo.
Yeah.
I think it was almost his last movie, second to last, if not
Second
last,
last,
right?
yes.
What did you learn from Richard Harris?
You know, I've never told anybody this before, but I looked at his script, and it had his notes, and he would like write around the subject, circle the subject, and then he would follow it, and then he would underline the verb, and then he would carry it over to the direct object. This is how he connected it. Along the way, I worked with some phenomenal pros, so I started thinking thoughts. And I said, well, I bet you that's what Richard was doing back there.
Connecting
Lines.
the ideas and the logic.
I
of
underline all of my stuff now.
Sly Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger, who you worked with in Escape Plan. What did you learn from these two really icons of action and something you've done a bit of?
They train extremely hard in their athleticism, as I did when I was coming up. They train even later in their lives continually, and they train as hard, and they put all that hard training into the work that they do. I had a scene with Arnold where they shoved a giant pipe down his throat, and he's that's going further. We have to go further, and the way he would control it, like the governor who would do that scene, and it was very, very, very physical, and no complaints, no complaining, no whining. Stallone, we were down in the brig in a fight scene, and they've got all this steel and stuff, and he's like, boom, boom, and he grabs and he's cut and probably had to get stitches, and he just like, get going. It was Rocky, you know, and that the toughness is what I loved about both of them. They were very, very tough.
Well, and this last person is certainly not tough at all on any level. Mel Gibson, what did you learn from working with Mel?
He has all the dimensions, right? He has the ability to lead. He's incredibly athletic. He's a genius actor. I mean, the guy, Shakespeare, you watch Hamlet, that'll tell you everything. If you watch the opening scene of Lethal Weapon, will tell you everything. Mel took it to another level in the opening scene when you see him in the opening scene of Lethal Weapon. He puts that gun to his mouth, and you see the tears come out. The level of depth that this guy can go is extraordinary. Plus, he's the greatest director I've ever worked for. He's a filmmaker.
I want to get back to Sound of Freedom now, because all of these skills, everything you've just told me from each of these men, you really end up utilizing in this part. When you got the script, what did you think of the role itself, and how did you prepare for that?
Well, you have a battled war hero story, you know. You have the innocence of Tim Ballard. He's like a childlike quality that Jesus talks about. I linked into that. I always wanted to do the movie Taken. When I saw that, I said, God, I wish I was available when that happened, or it was a brilliant film. Well, this was a Taken with a much bigger heart, much, much bigger. And you know, you and I talked about it. I think what people get turned off by is they hear all these stories about the trafficking of it, and but you learn something about it.
Yeah.
So a mother and father should be able to protect their kids. They should want to protect their kids.
And people don't realize 100,000 children are abducted and trafficked in the United States. Forget other countries.
No,
That's just in the United States.
300,000.
That high.
300,000 are abducted or lured into the sex trade a year. Ms. Rojas, okay, she, on April 26, she was giving sworn testimony, right, in front of the House Committee.
Right.
And she admitted sworn testimony that 85,000 children have gone missing that have crossed the border. So it's hitting, it's not a funny thing, this what's going on right now where we have open borders. Why are you letting these kids be taken like this? And they've disappeared. 85,000 children disappeared. That's almost the entire Rose Bowl stadium.
Yeah, and these are the children that were taken into U.S. custody, released into the mainland, and then the government
Oh,
does
yeah.
not know their whereabouts.
That's correct.
In the movie, we see Tim Ballard. He rescues a boy, and this boy's sister is still being held and used. She is in the possession of a cartel and the boss of that cartel.
Lane 6.
Is there some kind of problem, officer? Oh yeah, that's a old picture. You know how kids are these days. They just grow up so fast.
That's him.
No, I'm his uncle. Put your hands on the wheel. Do not go. I'm his uncle. You just ask him. Just ask him. I'm his uncle.
Is that reality? Is that a true story? Is this based on a true story?
It's like the Count of Monte Cristo where you have 1,200 pages and I got to eliminate characters. I got to get them all down to 14. So is it page by page? No. I think it would be a big mistake if people went and said, okay, this is not page for page perfect, and you're going to see things you don't want to see and understand why we couldn't put them in there.
Yeah.
It's far worse than you can imagine.
Yeah. Let's face it,
You
this
can't.
is explosive,
Can't show
horrible
No.
visuals. And the way that's delicately done, where you can imagine it but you don't see it, is really brilliant. And opens it up, I think, to
Yeah.
a wider audience than had you gotten very explicit with the material.
But my purpose would be for a mother to sit there and say, oh, I just don't want to see that film. Well, you know, if this gets to your backyard, and it is getting to your backyard, and it is in many people's backyards, and if you go to over 300,000 children a year are taken, aren't you responsible at some point to at least learn what to do? Where are they? And you learn that in the film. So it's a brilliant thing, weapon for that parent to go, okay, that guy doesn't belong here. Who is that guy and what's going on over here? My daughter's not going over there. It's, you know, it'd be like driving it to a gas station.
Yeah.
If people would just look at the lighting, they would go, oh, you know what, this is, I might want to drive another block or two. This is not a good place.
Tim always tells the story of Harriet Beecher Stowe, who wrote about what was happening in slavery
Yes.
and kind of awakened the conscience of the country long before there was a Civil War or Lincoln came around.
That's correct.
Is that what your intention here is with The Sound of Freedom
Yes.
and Eduardo's and Alejandro's? Is it to sensitize and awaken the conscience of a country and the world?
Oh, absolutely. Well, we're going for the whole thing. We're doing this 2 million tickets that we're working with Angel right now. We're going to sell 2 million tickets for 2 million children that are being trafficked right now to send Washington and all these governments a message that children are no longer for sale. God's children are no longer for sale.
Which is a line from the movie.
That's
that he
correct.
says. I know your wife was worried about your shooting in Colombia. Tim Ballard and his comrades, they're chasing down some of the most evil people on the planet who mean to and traffic in children. This is not, on its face, a happy, sweet subject. No. Was there any hesitation from you as a person, as an actor?
No, not.
Why not?
Because the script was too good. And if you've seen Alejandro Monteverde as a filmmaker, so those two things, and you know, frankly, my world changed after The Passion. So this could end up being one of the biggest films I've done, and they're selling like hotcakes right now. But what I have to tell your viewers is we only have 2,100 screens, where Disney's film has got 4,500 screens.
Well, you're up to 3,000 screens today.
Oh, wow.
So you're up to 3,000
Hey, that's
screens
big.
now.
wow, I'm in a good mood now.
But tell people what you want them to do, because this is Angel Studios works differently than other studios.
Yes. Well, they have a pay it forward program. They give tickets away for free. You know, they know that people have been down on their luck, you know, are unemployed. What's going on in the United States has affected a lot of people, so they can't afford it. Well, so, you know, you will be in the future, but right now, go to the film, go through the program. It's easy. And what benefit we get? Tell everybody you loved it. That is one of the best, you know, ideas I've ever heard of in film. Studios would never do this.
And you've said this is the second most important film of your career.
Passion.
The Passion being your first.
There's no question.
Is the resurrection coming?
Yes.
How soon?
So I went up to him and I asked him that. I said, "Are we going to be ready?"
No.
Yes. I said, will we be ready to go by January? And he said, "Yeah, maybe." And I said, "End of the fall?" "Yeah, maybe." And I said, "September?" "Yeah, maybe." And so now you go. So my mind, you'd think I'd say, "Okay, it'll be January." I'd asked him the same kind of thing when we did The Passion. It was in August. It was August 15th. That he said, "Okay, green means go" on August 15th. It was amazing because all of the Marian feast days, we just kept running into them on that film. You know, I know that she was making that film for her son.
What is your prayer for your audience who sees Sound of Freedom? What do you want them to do in the aftermath of seeing this movie?
I want you to not just think about trafficking. We have to think about grooming. We have to think about that. If you cut an arm off of an octopus, let's say it's trafficking, what happens? It grows right back, doesn't it? So you got to take the head out. We have to come together with all the churches in the world, all Christian churches, and unite and take back our children and our republic. It all goes hand in hand. We've got to come together, save our children, and it'll go hand to hand with our republic. And we got to get rid of pornography. That's one of the big ones. You just drive all over the country. All you're doing is creating more pedophiles. The Passion of the Christ was a film that opened my heart, my eyes, gave everything for it. I gave everything for this one. It took 2 years to sleep decently. I couldn't sleep because of this. And so what I'm excited about is that finally the world is going to start moving in that direction.
Is there a sequel plan?
There's a script already. They've already done a budget on it, but obviously it's based on the success of this film. And it's not a 2, it's just the next chapter. This mission goes from Colombia to Haiti, and this one is even better than the first script.
Sound of Freedom 2, we'll be waiting.
Yeah.
Thank you, my friend. Great to
Thank
see
you.
Sound of Freedom, starring Jim Caviezel, hits theaters Tuesday, July 4th. For information on theaters and showtimes, how to get advance tickets, and how to help Sound of Freedom reach that 2 million for 2 million goal, that's 2 million tickets for the 2 million trafficked children, visit angelstudios.com/freedom.